Hey guys, once again I find myself waiting on some parts to arrive. Had to get some 500 volt electrolytics for the Philco 7008, and I'm waiting on parts for the GE Portacolor. Meanwhile, this box just arrived, so I thought I would take a look inside. Now, some of you know the backstory to this. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I strongly suggest you watch the video I'll link to in the description. In summary, the gentleman who was working on this radio is no longer with us. The guy who inherited it doesn't know much about restoring vintage radios. It's a Philco, just like the kind I'm working on all the time. So some YouTube friends contacted me and suggested, hey, why don't you take a look at it for him. Well, I made an offer to, and he sent it to me, and it just arrived. Now, not to harp on this, but not the best way to pack a radio. Looks like he just kind of saran wrapped the radio chassis and then put it in with a bunch of foam peanuts. As soon as I picked up the box, I could feel this kind of flopping around inside. When I ship it back, I'll do it a little bit differently. I will put this inside a small box and then inside of this box with the foam around it. Problem with this is you got the foam pushing in on all sides, and you can bend stuff over, and when this is flopping around. Tubes were taken out and put into a separate container, which kind of popped open, but that's alright. It's got tubes in it, tube shields, and he included some cloth covered wire. Now, this is not the reproduction stuff that I've got some of. This stuff. This is the real deal from back in the day. And so as I've said in prior videos, not too crazy about the reproduction stuff. I understand it's UL rated and they have to use kind of thicker wire for that. But basically it's just PVC modern stranded wire with cloth put around it. You can see how much thicker it is than the old stuff. It'd be cool to get a bunch of rolls of this in different colors. The wire being thicker, it's harder sometimes to work in the radio and get it through holes in the chassis and whatnot. Anyway, let's take a look at what we got. So when he inherited the radio, it was in pieces, and he made a video that I linked to where he put it back together as best he could. I shipped it to me, and it looks like it's pretty well assembled. And so there were a bunch of wires. He wasn't sure where they should be going. Well, I've got one advantage working for me. In addition to the blurry scans of Philco service info you can download from places like Nostalgia Air, I have the real deal. A while ago on eBay, I found somebody selling this notebook of original Philco service info, and it just happens to have this radio, the 37640. I'm going to pop this out. I'll make some photocopies of it because I don't want to get the original dirty, but we'll take a quick look at it right now. Alright, so this is much easier to read than copy it on from Nostalgia Air. So it's I believe it's a Tombstone radio. I don't actually have the cabinet, I just have the chassis. And it's a pretty decent model. I think it's got 4 bands to it, or at least 3 bands. Maybe it's 3, yeah. RF broadcast, they're all RF, so broadcast, police, and shortwave. And this also has this little thing, a shadow meter, which you may recall from my Philco 15DX. Well, the one in my Philco 15 is the really early style. This will be the later style. This may have been the last year they even used it, 37. Otherwise, it's pretty similar, actually, to the Philco 3810 and 38.7 share set I worked on recently. 6K7 RF, 6A8 detector oscillator, 6K7 IF amp, 6Q7 detector at first audio, and then we got 6F6 push-pull audio output, and a 5Y4 rectifier. Oh, pretty standard for Philco from 37. The nice thing about this is not only do we have the schematic, we've got a parts locator and a parts list that's very legible. So I think all this will be very handy. The only thing that's a little bit trickier on this is that it's got a separate RF deck. This will be good practice for me because I've not worked on one of the RF decks. I have several radios that have it, like I have a 3710, and I worked on a Philco bullet radio transformerless set a while back that had one. But I don't think I got around. I didn't touch the RF deck. I just left it alone. I didn't want to deal with it. There was only like one cap in, and the radio was working fairly well. Because they can be tricky to get out and work on. Alright, so here's what we got. So yeah, a lot of wires. I didn't include the speaker, apparently. So that's going to be a problem because I think the output transformer is mounted on the speaker. And I don't know what I'm going to hook this up to. So I'll have to contact him about that. And it looks like the guy who worked on this installed these push pins. I'm pretty sure these weren't original. Often Philco would hardwire the cable right to the speaker, so when you got it out of the cabinet to work on it, you kind of had to take the speaker in and out with the chassis to work on it. But you might have put some connectors on it, which is a nice touch. And you put some new spaghetti tubing over the speaker wires. Got some light surface corrosion on the chassis. Not the end of the world. There's two filter caps. Let's see. Okay, it basically no works. Or no, he started working on this side. Okay, but definitely hasn't been fully recapped. Oh, and he did stick some new electrolytics underneath the chassis. Curious as to how far he got. So this thing flopping around is the shadow meter. I'm not sure where that would have mounted. It probably mounts to the cabinet. Without the cabinet, there's just nowhere for this to attach to, I'm guessing. So a little light back here shines into this thing. And there should be a piece of translucent plastic that goes over the front. And there's a vane inside there that moves back and forth with signal strength. Q-tip down in there. Yep, the vane moves quite nicely. That's good. The big problem with these is this coil goes open. It looks like there would have been a piece of plastic right here that broke off. So this is kind of exposed right now. So I'll be delicate with that. Check the continuity on it if it's open. I know some guys have rewound these. There is a ton of wire on there. It's very, very fine gauge. And it's like a mile of wire. And I don't have this set up to rewind something like that. So keep your fingers crossed that it's good. Power transformer on this, you stick the tube right into the transformer, save space I suppose. You got a reproduction dial for it. One of your drives a little sticky. So fine tuning, coarse tuning on the outside. I'm not sure, either this mechanism down in here needs some lubricating and cleaning, or this might be rubbing up here. This new dial. Yeah, I can't even go back now. Band switch. That's kind of stiff too. And then we got a tone control, which I believe you said was messed up, and volume control. I'm not sure if either of these is the original. The shaft lengths aren't the same. Yeah, this is definitely messed up. Philco would put the power switch on the tone control, so you could kind of leave the volume at the level you liked and turn the radio off and on. The separate switch. So that's over here, that's a power switch. Coupling over to this, which is tone control. I don't think that's the original. I think that might just be, I think that's just a power switch, and it's not even working, so gotta do something about that. And, oh, that's curious. That's probably the original volume control. It's not what I was expecting. There's a shaft that runs all the way to the back of the radio, and the volume control's back here. Well, I can see I replaced, presume these were paper caps, replaced them with modern film caps. He used the radial type instead of the axial type. That's alright. Carbon film resistors. And little ceramic caps instead of mica. I'm probably going to redo some of that. Some of these wires aren't connected anymore, and I got to double check all this work. I like to use mica to replace mica. These are super cheap ceramic caps, and they will drift with temperature. These are probably alright, although there's 400 volt caps rather than the 630 people more commonly use. And I don't really like this jumper wire here, which just exposed. You know, they could short out to the chassis or something. And there's at least one original resistor down in there. Looks like he didn't have some of the correct values for some of these, and he attached a lot of resistors together in series, and I don't like all that. I got plenty of parts on hand, I can redo it. And I can see no work was done in here. And some work was done over here. Some of this construction is a little new to me. I'm guessing this is the bottom of the transformer. There's a bunch of lugs and they put components right across it. I haven't quite seen that in a Philco before. You see there's caps stuck in all around. Alright, well, I said it looked restorable to me, and I still think it is, but I want to check on a few things sooner than later. I want to see if the power transformer is any good. And I checked on the shadow meter. You don't need the shadow meter for the radio to work, but it's a nice touch. And gotta see about that speaker, because if the output transformer is bad on the speaker, that's another thing that needs to be tracked down. The tubes, I'm not sure if they're all here, but they're all pretty readily available, so that's not really an issue. I don't think all the tubes are here anymore. 6A8, 6. It looks like we're missing both the 6F6 output tubes, these guys, and missing one of the other tubes. 6A8, a 6K7. I got two 6K7s and a 6A8. What are we missing? 6Q7's missing. I think I had a little bit of trouble finding one of those for my Philco 38.7 share side. Now, unlike those, my 38.7 and my 38.10, this uses the same type of G tubes, which are the harder ones to find, but it doesn't have those tube shields, so you could, I believe, use the GT types, or even the metal types, which are far easier to get, because there's nothing in the way. You just got to make sure that pin 1 isn't going to anything, because that's ground on the GT versions. Shields, one looks like well, we got all shields, I think. 1, 2, 3. And I need new mounts for the chassis. It looks like there's a grommet in there, but I do have some of the proper types. I gotta go through and look at some references online to see which are the right type, but I know I've ordered up some for various projects, and I think I've got the right ones on hand. Like, I think this might be the one that goes back here. If not, I'll order them up. Alright, so looks like I've got my work cut out for me. Alright, let's see if the coil on the shadow meter is any good. I traced out the wiring. It goes through a hole in the chassis. right down to these two lugs. So let's see what we get. 1.5K, that sounds reasonable. I'm going to disconnect those wires. Well, for one thing, I want to disconnect this meter entirely and put it to the side while I work on a chassis. I don't need it, and it's just going to get damaged. Something else that occurred to me is I have a Philco 118 MX. 118 chassis. The MX is just the cabinet style, and that has push-pull 6F6 output on it. So I might be able to use that speaker and transformer with this radio. We'll see. I fired up a 6-volt power supply, so first off, let's see about this light. So if you go around here, power to this guy, and nothing, but could be a bad bulb. Oh yeah, that's a bad bulb. If it wasn't before, it sure is now. I think it's cracked. They got this shield mashed onto the glass. Very difficult to get out. Okay. Can't tell if it's 44 or 47. Let's see what we got. There's 44. There we go. Alright, so that will create a narrow beam of light going through there. Now, for the vein, fire up a WaveTech 183 function generator. Alrighty, let's put this pretty low frequency, get the amplitude down. Definitely don't want any DC offset. And clips to it. Give this a try. Alright, increase the amplitude. Max amplitude. No, nothing. Maybe go up a little higher in frequency. Sine wave, it should be fine. Oh, helps if I turn the WaveTech on. Try that again. Yep, I can see it moving. Try going up a little more in the amplitude. I'm pretty sure you guys can see that. Seems to be working just fine. I made a photocopy and enlarged the schematic a little bit. Same with the parts locator and parts list. And I started clearing out some of the work that had been done down in there, including that board that had some dubious repairs on it. And I think one of these lugs broke off while it was being worked on. That thing was some of the old caps were still in there, but there were new caps as well. Maybe he was doing one at a time to keep track of things. I don't know. But with that out of the way, we can get at the transformer. Also took out the broken control, and yeah, I mean, it's the insides are just gone. Here's where the power switch would be, and then there should be a multi-position tone control here, but the inside wiper stuff is just gone. So, well, dug around the junk bin and found a couple possibilities. One is this, which is a Philco control, and it has a power switch on the back, and then multiple positions, but none of these switch contacts seem to work, at least not that I can make out. But something just occurred to me. I was wondering, I was checking for continuity between these lugs as I rotated it. It just occurred to me that the common is probably the body of this. So let me give this a whirl. And then I came up with this guy as well, which has, it looks like the perfect shaft length, but it's definitely not a Philco control, and it's not even doesn't even have the tone part. It's just a two-position rotary switch with multiple wafers, and I would only be using one of them, and the rest would just be unused. It would I would just need, like, say, two of these, just off on, off on, off on, and that's it. And I could clip the rest of these off. So otherwise, this is the right type of shaft for a Philco knob, where it's not a half moon. It's round with a little bit of a flat on it, and the shaft length is right. This one has the right type of shaft, but only here, and it would be much too long. I'd have to cut it down to like here, and then file off a portion of it. Well, I also could keep digging. I might have some other parts. Let's check out this control a little further here. And this has one extra position that I need. It has it on, and then well, that's 5 positions total, I believe. So it's off, on, another on, another on. Ah, so that position is what this one's making contact. Go back one, and then that guy kicks in. Go back another one, and then no, I thought this one would start conducting. That conducts here. A little confusing. Or is that one? Okay. That's on in one position. So it seems like that switch is closed in this position, I don't think any is closed. And then we have the other two. So I could rig this up to make power and a tone control is what I'm getting at. And this one, the other one would just be power. In practice, I rarely use the tone control. I usually leave it in the position such that I've got no filtering action on the incoming signal. Alright, what I want to do now is start checking out this power transformer. So by poking around down here and tracing out wiring, I figured out that this wire and this one going over to this block cap the primary. This cap, I don't know if it's been restuffed, but that is the one that goes right across the power line to ground for AC line filter. There should be safety caps. I don't know if it's been restuffed or not. I will disconnect it for now. And then the other secondaries are a little bit harder to trace out. This one is pretty straightforward, a little hard to see, but that is the 6.3 volt supply. I gotta be careful how I set this down. Alright, the thick wires for the filament supply go down in over here, kind of tucked underneath this bias resistor. Now the others are hard to see because very few of them are exposed because of that rectifier being built and socket being built into the top of the transformer. So like the 5 volt winding and the 2 plates wires, so like the 2 yellow wires here and one of the blue are hidden inside here. The only thing coming out are 2 more wires. One is the center tap going over to the bias resistors and the ground, and then this guy, which goes over to the field coil and the filter capacitors. So, I think the simplest way to check this out is, one, to check continuity, but two, for powering, I will put in the rectifier and power it up, but I will make sure that that blue wire is going to nothing. I'll just hook it up to the meter. I don't want it going, well, the field coil's not here, that would be on the speaker. And this cap I've clipped out, and it's not going to that resistor anymore, so that wire's just floating loose. But if I go between, say, ground and a blue wire, I should get a few hundreds of volts. And I can pop some of these tubes in, and they should glow with just the 6.3 volt filament winding. In other words, I want to disable the B+ to the radio. Otherwise, I could just power up the primary and stick some probes down in here, which I'm actually going to do right now to check for continuity. So I just clip one of these to the chassis, resistance, and then stick this down into the socket. We'll be going from ground through the bias resistor over to the center tap. Then if I go over to this pin on the 5Y4 socket, or that pin, I should get 162 plus 25, 187 ohms or so. They don't label the pin numbers on these schematics. It's something I find rather irritating about Philco schematics, is they do not label the pin numbers. Let's see. I think it is shown on a voltage diagram though. This guy, yeah. Alright, so let's get this lined up the same way. Oh, that's the underside. That's kind of anyways, it looks like the 2 plates are opposite the key on either side. So I think here, 285, and over here. Oh, that resistance I was off a little bit. It's the bias resistance plus the resistance of that. So it's 25 ohms plus 162 plus 70 and 75 ohms. So, yeah, around 280. Sure, close enough. One side should be slightly higher than the other. Yeah, alright, that looks good. And filament for the 5Y4 is heater. I think it's these 2 guys. So it should have very low resistance there. Cool. Or fairly low resistance. Yeah. And I already checked the primary and there's continuity on that. So I'm going to wire in a power cord, pop some of these tubes in, and got to figure out a good way to brace up this chassis when I'm working on a tube, because I can't just flip it upside down. Otherwise it's going to hit on this tube, and these 2 ears sticking up on a tuning dial, that's no good. For now, try to balance it on its side. Power transformer side down seems to be fairly stable. So, right like so. I popped out that Bakelite block and it has been restuffed, but they are not safety caps. They should have been 0.015 microfarad type Y safety caps. Why? Because they go from one leg to ground. If they were going right across the line, they should be type X. And these are also 0.033, and they're rated for 1,000 volts, which should give you more protection. Let's say a 630 volt cap, but they really should be those type safety caps that are rated for AC line duty. Alright, so here are the two primary wires. I just temporarily tacked a power cord. No, it's not at all vintagey looking, but hey, it was handy. It'll do the job. And this scraggly looking wire here with some cracked insulation, this should be the B+. It'll be pulsed DC because there's no filter cap on it. The meter should give us an indication, and we should see the 5Y4 light up, and we should see 6K7 here light up. So let me get the meter set up here. Get it over to here. Okie dokie. Dim the lights a little. And this will be plugged into a fused variac. Don't really need the isolation at all because this is a transformer set, but the fuse is nice to have. And it's got an ammeter too, so I can see which current it's drawing. Alright, so without further ado, let's give this a try. 388 volts. Came up really fast. Couldn't really see if the tubes were lit up though, so I'm going to rotate this thing around a little. There's my ground lead. Alright. Try that again. Hey, 5Y4. Yeah, tubes are lit up. Alright. I think that power transformer is just fine. Alright, so now we're start with lots of things to do, First, I'm going to take off that center deck. It's completely disconnected, it looks like to me. All these wires here with little labels on them, and it needs to be recapped anyways. So, and with that out of the way, it'll make the rest of it easier to work on. And I'll rebuild up the power supply. I'll rig up a new power switch. I'll restuff the Bakelite block. I'll rebuild this board. Dig up the missing tubes. Pretty sure I can dig up the missing knobs. So I got a lot of little steps to do. And we are missing, so not only are we missing the output transformer, but also missing a field coil, which is part of the power supply. So we don't have what they're showing as 53 here, which is a center tapped output transformer, push-pull on the 6F6 outputs. Also don't have this field coil. So without that speaker and the field coil being there, the radio cannot work. Something needs to be done about that. Here are the type of capacitors I will be using. These are Y2 or X1 0.01. Don't have 0.015. These are fairly inexpensive and will do the job just fine. You can use them in both an X1 or a Y2 application. If you want to know more about that, Just Radios has a fantastic page explaining all about safety caps. I really don't want to go into this video. Just be aware that when you put capacitors across the AC line or from the AC line to ground, you want to use these types of capacitors. Alright, so I mentioned taking off the RF deck, but before I do that, let's take a look at this. So this is what I found in the back here that was mounted to support the rear. Well, on the front, the two original mounts appear to still be there, and they're in decent condition. See, this is actually kind of bouncy in here. Well, by looking at those, it reminded me of what the originals looked like, and yes, I do have some reproductions. They're readily available, several different styles. This appears to be the one for this radio. You can tell that because it fits right in that hole on the back. And actually it goes in here. So it goes in between the RF chassis and main chassis, and goes through that hole. And then here is the original screw and this shoulder washer thingy. This slides inside of the rubber, and then this bolt goes right through and attaches to it. Third hole on the other side. Oh, too high. Like so. Yeah, I think it's a better job of supporting it than it was just grommet in there. Alright, now that said, I'm going to take it right back out. Oops, camera died on me, not sure where it was. What I was trying to do is figure out how to take this off. Looks like I could have got all these 1/4-inch screws and remove this whole side piece from either side, but that seems like overkill. Looks like this should be able to slide forward and then lift up, except that this is butting into this. This can't slide forward. Well, I know other guys have had the same problem online, and I think it would be wise for me to do a little research and read up on how to do this. Oh, I think I may have just figured it out on my own. You can tip this forward, which rotates these to past that point of where they come loose, and voila, it is out. Cool. And now I can see those dreaded caps I've also seen guys talking about online, like the one down in there. How does one get at that? Well, looks like you can take out a whole bunch of sheet metal screws and just start disassembling this thing. That doesn't look like too much fun. So let's take a look at some of these original mounts. They're in pretty good shape, but since I've got repros on hand, I'm inclined to get it. So it looks like I showed you two styles. It looks like this style, the reproduction I've got, this is for the side, and this one is for the back. And these reproductions, they do a fine job. Getting the diameter and the elasticity, very much like the originals. Yeah, you see these are okay, but they're starting to crack. They won't last forever. So I think I'll just go ahead and replace those. Alright, so we will put this out of the way for now. And now this is much easier to work on.